What's up? How's it going? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. It is Thursday, October the 16th. The Bills on a bye, but we will have plenty to talk about Bills-wise in terms of what we are concerned about, what we're worried about going into the bye week and for the rest of the season this year. Also got a special guest in today. Amit Chitre is here to my left, former News 8 reporter. He's got a fantastic new book out. If you are a kid who is thinking about playing sports beyond high school, a parent of one of those kids, a different way to view how you should be approaching the world around you and the world that you're about to enter when it comes to being a student athlete in 2025. We're going to have a great conversation coming up a little later on in the show. But as always, we'll start with our Bills takes for today. And, like I said, Bills heading into the bye, coming off a couple of losses. I know that it feels kind of like the sky should be falling. In fact, Joe Brady said exactly that on Tuesday, that from the outside, it should feel like the sky is falling. And that's appropriate when you lose 2 games in a row. The thing is with the Bills, under Sean McDermott, they've lost 2 games in a row every single season. And all but one of those seasons has ended up in a playoff spot. The last 5 have ended up in a division title. So losing 2 games in a row is not the end of the world for the Bills. This is something, frankly, they do every year. And they have managed it just fine all those other seasons. So there's no need to hit the panic button. But there is very much a need to hit the concern button because the last 2 games have certainly exposed a number of worries about this team, flaws, things that certainly need to improve if the Bills are going to be the Super Bowl contender we all expect them to be. The funny thing is, this year in the NFL, it seems like everybody has mega flaws. I mean, who's good right now? Who do you really like? I saw a power ranking the other day that had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the number 1 team in the NFL, and I looked at it and said, that's probably right. That's probably who it is. Baker bleeping Mayfield is the quarterback of the best team in the NFL right this second. That just tells you how flawed and how bunched together the top half of this league is right now. I mean, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Baltimore is disaster at 1-5. And I still think they might be a threat at the end of the year. So the Bills being 4-2, coming off 2 losses, doesn't put them in a spot they cannot recover from. In fact, they're still probably right near the top of this league as it stands right now, even coming off 2 losses in a row against 2 teams that I think in the preseason we thought the Bills would win against. So what I did today, going into the bye, I ranked the top 5 concerns the Bills have right this second and how concerned the Bills should be or fans should be. So a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is, it's not a big deal, and 10 is, this could very well end the season. So it's very subjective, but it's my show. I get to make the rules. Here's the first concern. We're going to go from bottom to top 5. Number 1 or number 5 for me is the run game. And not necessarily whether they can run the ball, the Bills. I mean, James Cook is one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's absolutely elevated to a top echelon running back. Carl Jones and I, a couple weeks ago on BKL Nightly, ranked NFL running backs. We went through who's better than James Cook right now. We came up with only 5 guys we could put ahead of him. He's in that first tier. He's no worse than 6th. He's a top 5-ish running back. So it's not about James Cook or the run game in particular. It is more about how often the Bills are able to get James Cook involved. And there has been a couple of games, too, where James Cook has really not been enough of a part of this offense because teams have had a pretty good opportunity or done a pretty good job of taking him out of the game. Number 1, Baltimore. And week 5 against New England. Both those teams held James Cook under 50 yards rushing. And even against Atlanta, James Cook had a nice night overall, 17 carries, 87 yards, I think it was. But there were 4 drives where the Bills had 2 yards or less rushing the ball. Some of that is on defenses being able to stop the run game at times. I think New England 2 weeks ago had a unique front 7 personnel group that really is going to be a pain in the neck for everybody to run against. And it has been so far. But that is the exception. The rule here for the Bills in general has been success with the run game, and being able to continue building on that, I think, is a concern. So it's not necessarily about not being able to run. I think this team will be able to run, but will the Bills be willing to run the ball as much as they should? I really think during the bye week, this team needs to take a hard look at what they do offensively, because while Josh Allen is the MVP, Josh Allen is the driver of the offense. It's kind of the way I've been describing it. To me, the run game and James Cook are the engine. And I know you have Josh Allen, and you feel like this is the MVP. We got to put the ball in his hands all the time. The fact is, and we're going to talk about this part of the team in a little while here, what Josh Allen has around him in the passing game might not be good enough to go with that strategy. This team might have to consider treating Josh Allen, as crazy as this sounds, treating Josh Allen a lot more like a rookie quarterback you're trying to protect than the MVP you want to unleash. Now, this doesn't mean doing it all the time, but when you have a rookie quarterback, you want to have a good running game. You want to, generally, you'll call passes that are short screen type things, low risk options. Now, you don't have to do that part of it with Josh. Josh Allen, you can give him all the risk you want. But I do think running this offense as if the quarterback is not the guy you want to have the ball, not the guy you want making plays, is the right way to go. Because when the Bills run the ball, they're practically unstoppable. Even in this Atlanta game, the success they had in the second half was when they got James Cook going. The 3 games they won after the Baltimore game, James Cook over 100 all 3 games. So basing this offense, having the run game being the thing that drives this offense, and then even going to play action more after that. The Bills right now, 7th in the NFL, EPA per attempt on play action passes. But they're only 23rd in the percentage of play action passes that they have used this year. And for the 6 teams who are ahead of them in EPA per play action attempt, in other words, for the 6 teams who are right now more efficient on play action passes, they use play action passes on, or among the top 10 in the NFL in the percentage of play action passes they use. There's more room for the Bills to use that part of the offense. Run the ball more, use play action more, protect your quarterback a little bit more as if he was a rookie. And then when you need to use Josh Allen, he's still Josh Allen. He can still make all those plays. But the idea that in Atlanta, when you're down 7, 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and you go pass, I know Josh Allen's there, and a lot of times that's going to work out. I think for this offense to be the best version of itself, to steal a Sean McDermott phrase, they need to use the run game more. And being able to do that, being willing to do that, to me is one of the top 5 concerns in this team. I got it ranked as a number, or rated as a 3, not a huge concern, but it is in the top 5 for me. Number 4 for this team, this is a pretty easy one, injuries so far. It's been a pain in the neck. Look, it's going to happen. The thing with the injuries for the Bills, right now the concern is more quantity than quality. I mean, think about who the injured guys are. These are generally not season changers. You know, you got Curtis Samuel. Being injured is kind of how he rolls these days. TJ Sanders, Max Hairston, the rookies. Hairston hasn't played one bit. Sanders hasn't been very good. We don't know what they are yet. So their loss isn't as impactful to this season right now. The guys you're seeing on your screen right now, Dalton Kincaid, Josh Palmer, Daquan Jones. Those are the more impactful guys. But even Palmer has 9 catches in his last 5 games. Daquan Jones is a solid starter, one of the better run defenders in this team. But he might not be the best the way Deion Walker has already ascended. Kincaid is obviously a big part of this offense and a big part of when you have the injury discussion about what's lost. But even Kincaid, for as good as his start has been this year, is not even on pace right now. If he had played 17 games, and he won't do that now, but if he had played 17 games, his pace is not even for 1,000 yards. So this is not a receiver or a weapon that's, again, changing your season. So yeah, the injuries have not been good, and it's been a pain in the neck. Obviously, having both your linebackers down, your starting linebackers for the second half of that Atlanta game was not ideal. But even there, you know, Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard are not top-end S-tier stars. And the way Shaq Thompson has played, the drop-off from Milano Bernard to Thompson and Dorian Williams is not that far anymore. So, yes, I think the injuries have been an annoyance. It would certainly have been nice to have Max Harrison get an opportunity to solve a problem that we're going to talk about in a minute here too. But as long as you have Josh Allen and James Cook and the offensive line and the top 3 pass rushers, then this team can certainly be functional as a top echelon team, as a near elite team. It doesn't mean you're going to be elite, but when you get those guys in the field, when you have that group on the field, then this team will be able to do the basic things it intends to do. Certainly the offensive part of it, like I talked about. You get the O-line, you get James Cook, you get Josh Allen. Everything else in terms of health is almost gravy. Because you don't You don't need that pass catching group to be able to score 30 points. We found that out last year, that they can do it in general, that the potential is there without elite pass catchers. And then on defense, it's not necessarily the defense is great, but if you're going to rank who the best players on the defense are right now, Christian Benford and Taron Johnson in the top 5, but the only other 3 guys in that top 5 are Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, and Joey Bosa. So as long as those front 3 are healthy, plus the guys on offense, I think the injuries won't be that much of a problem. So like the run game and the usage, I gave my concern meter a 3 there. Not end of the world, because the guys that they have, the guys who are healthy, are good enough to carry this team, but certainly an annoyance. All right, number 3 on my top 5 list of concerns going into the bye week, run defense and tackling. I kind of put them together because they aren't too disparate from each other. These are 2 things that are going to run together in terms of if one's effective, then the other one is too. The thing with the tackling is that normally I should say many guys on this team are better tacklers than they've shown. I mean, Taylor Rapp, the last couple of years in Buffalo, has been one of the Bills' better tacklers. That has not been the case this year. Certainly not against Atlanta, and there were instances prior to that where he's taken bad angles. It just has not been a good year for Taylor Rapp in terms of the tackling. Some of that I wonder about. He's playing for the first time with Cole Bishop next to him instead of a more experienced player. So how much is he worried about running the back of the defense as opposed to just doing his own job? I think that's a part of it. But in general, as poor as the tackling has been through the first 6 weeks, I do feel confident, at least a moderate amount of confidence, that will improve. That this team has generally been better than that. The other thing, too, they faced 100% healthy and at the top of his game, Derrick Henry and Bijan Robinson in these first 6 games. I mean, those are 2 guys. Those are probably the 2 best running backs the Bills are going to see all year. Bijan, I think, is unquestionably right now the number 1 running back in the league, and tackle breaking is a big part of that. So not to excuse the Bills for the poor tackling display they put on Monday night in Atlanta, but I can at least say, well, you're not doing it against a run-of-the-mill running back. You're doing it against the best guy in the league at the absolute top of his game. But the tackling does need to get better. When it comes to the run game in general, and this is why the concern meter for me is up near a 6. When you get to the playoffs, or when the Bills have gotten to the playoffs, almost always when they get eliminated, you look at the stats and the run totals for the team that knocks them out are alarmingly high. Cincinnati in the snow a couple years ago was the big one. A team that couldn't run the ball ran all over the Bills that day. So this run defense, although in a league where the passing game is king, where if you can stop the pass, that's almost all that matters. You can get away with having a bad run defense in a lot of ways. At the end of the day, when the Bills get into the postseason, when it's time to try and win a Super Bowl, that run defense is enough of a problem that it's part of the reasons they get knocked out at the end of the year. And why I have it at a 6 is because I don't see much of a change. And this is largely the same group of guys that couldn't win in Kansas City last year, couldn't stop anything in Kansas City last year in the AFC Championship. Now, Deion Walker's been, the one guy you look at and say, that might be better. And he's got a number of splash plays that have left me very encouraged. I love Deion Walker. I love his game. I like the guy. I think he's got the right attitude. His massive size is certainly an attribute that you like to have. But as many splash plays as he had Monday night in Atlanta, 4 tackles for a loss and a pass knocked down to the line of scrimmage, most of the rest of the night, he was getting pushed around by 1 blocker. He's as much of a culprit in the 8 gazillion yards Bijan Robinson had Monday night as anyone else is, even if he had a number of really big plays in the second half and the fourth quarter that helped give the Bills offense a chance. All that said, this Deion Walker, this is your number 1 hope for improvement in the run game. And he's a guy that 2 out of 3 plays is really not effective in that area yet. Now, he continues to get better, and as long as he improves, maybe when we get to January, what 96 is doing in run defense will look a little different. The other reason for some hope here is that the Bills are about to get Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt back from suspension. Now, Ogunjobi, I don't think, is much of a run defender. I think he's a better pass rusher than he is a run stopper. Bottom line, he should be a solid rotational piece, something you can depend on so you don't have to bring Jordan Phillips off of a practice squad once every 3 games. Hoyt is different. Hoyt on the edge is a guy that I'm really interested to see how much he can do impacting the run defense. Can he take some of the snaps off Joey Bosa's plate, be a really good run defender, and let Bosa focus on pass rushing, which he's been pretty darn good at so far this year. I know the sacks aren't there, but the underlying metrics for Joey Bosa say he's been a top 5 to top 10 rusher this year. I tend to not agree. The eye test that I've had with the film doesn't quite put Bosa up that high, but he is no worse than what Greg Rousseau was doing last year when Greg Rousseau was at the top of his game. So Bosa's been very effective. And if you can save some of those snaps for the pass game, put Michael Hoyt, who I think is a better run defender than Bosa. Bosa's been okay defending the run, but not great. You put Hoyt out there, that might change a significant amount of what this Bills defense looks like. But that's all just a nice theory right now. We haven't seen one bit of it, and we won't until the Bills come back from the bye after Carolina. But Deion Walker's improvement, Hoyt, and to a lesser degree, Ogunjobi's potential to improve this defense. It's why I only have run defense and tackling as my 3rd biggest worry and why it's only a 6. The other part of it too, like I said, if your offense is good enough, if your offense is scoring 30 a game or close to that, like the Bills did when they were rolling last season, then you can manage not having a great run defense. You can get away with it some weeks. So we'll see if the Bills get anything more out of the run defense than they've gotten so far this year. The team that played Monday night, I mean, they can't win championships with that. They were a little fortunate even that Atlanta didn't get into the 30s between the Drake London play at the end of the half where, if his toe comes down half a second later, that's an extra 7 on the board. Bills also blocked a field goal that saved some points. So this defense, they only have 24 on the scoreboard, but we all watched the game. We know it wasn't anywhere near that clean of a performance, especially after what we saw in the first half. All right, my number 2 worry going into the bye week. This would be corner 2 and safeties, which has been just not good enough so far in a lot of ways. Look, Trey White had a really nice training camp, and I was really encouraged to see what he could do in the regular season. But I think even Trey White, the professional that he is, would tell you that it hasn't been good enough. And you don't need the eye test or anecdotally to prove that to you. The 3 top teams the Bills have played, the 2 they lost to and the one they probably should have lost to, New England, Atlanta, and Baltimore, not only did each one of those teams have a 100-yard receiver, each one of those teams had a 140-yard receiver, which is ridiculous to think about for a secondary that has Christian Benford on the team, a guy who plays at a pretty high level. So when you start with that corner position, it's certainly been unfortunate that Max Hairston and Dorian Strong have been hurt. Strong's got the neck injury that seems pretty serious. I don't think you can count on him being a factor at any point this year. And then with Max, we've talked about it a little bit on BKL Nightly that when you're a rookie and you miss all a training camp, that's like the foundation of the season. You end up so far behind. I think the Mike Tomlin line is the train leaves the station without you. So expecting Max Hairston to be able to catch up in season and make an impact at corner 2, I don't think is very likely. To the point where if it's me, I think I make the argument that my trade deadline priority at the top of the list is finding a corner to play that spot. That not counting on Max Hairston to fix it is going to be the best way for the Bills and Brandon Beane to go. You can make an argument with wide receiver, and we'll talk about that in a minute. With the safeties, look, Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop are still a young developing combo. Rapp isn't individually a young guy who you would expect to further ascend. He's kind of in his prime. Maybe you can coach him up a bit. But the 2 guys working together, especially with Cole Bishop still very early in his career, I think it's reasonable to say that you could find some more improvement from that group, that those guys could just get better on their own later on in the season. Now, like I said, Rapp at some point's got to be a better tackler. He has been. It hasn't been the first part of this year. That needs to improve for the Bills to be able to have him as a dependable safety, as a guy that they can stick with and win a championship with. And I know there are many fans, many of whom I've talked with in social media, who do not think that Taylor Rapp is a guy who can start on a Super Bowl team. I think he can, but I'm judging that more on what I saw in 2023 and 2024, not the first 6 games of this season. I mean, the defense the first 6 games of this year even if you want to curve it with some of the injuries they've taken, is probably not good enough to win a Super Bowl. So that means a number of guys either have to come in new and improve that, or guys have to get better on their own, and Taylor Rapp certainly falls in the latter category. Cole Bishop, too. The problem with Cole Bishop is that 6 games in, even after that incredible interception, it was against the Saints, I think it was, where he took away the Philly special play, there are still too many times where, to me, it looks like Cole Bishop is paddling hard just to stay afloat. That the game still looks too big for him at times. Not all the time, but at times. And obviously, you know, when you're getting essentially dunked on by Derrick Henry and Bijan Robinson on long touchdown runs, it doesn't help the look, the vibe, even if those two plays by themselves are not indicative of what he is as a player. Top to bottom as a player, there is some good stuff there. And he is one of the more athletic players the Bills have in this defense. If you want to check out BKL Nightly, the Let's Talk Ball edition that I just published with myself and Carl Jones talking about the Falcons game, we went into, you know, who the Bills have defensively in terms of good athletes, plus athletes, and Cole Bishop is very much close to the top of the list there. So the Bills need to be able to make use of that athleticism at some point. That has to be something that's benefiting this team, that's impacting this defense. And there are moments when you see it, but not nearly enough of them so far. So I know there's some talk about the Bills trading for a safety, and I wouldn't hate it if you're trying to, you know, cash in on this year, win a Super Bowl this year. But to me, corner 2 is the bigger concern. And this is why, you know, my concern meter here is at 7, because if you don't address something among those 3 guys, if you roll all year with what you have on the roster at safety and at your second corner spot, we've already seen that not only are you going to give up big games to receivers, you're going to give up monster games. You're going to give up games that will kill you in 60 minutes, things that you cannot survive. You're going to give up 147 yards in one half to Drake London. I mean, what's Patrick Mahomes going to do? What's A.J. Brown going to do in the Super Bowl if the Bills get that far and if Philly decides to, you know, just throw passes every once in a while? What's, my goodness, Tampa Bay going to do in the Super Bowl if it's Mike Evans and Ibuka and Chris Godwin against the current secondary the Bills have? I don't think they can survive that without these 3 guys either bringing in new guys or, more importantly, getting better. So I think this spot needs to be addressed in some way with a new body, or you're going to have to get your safeties to play a heck of a lot better and hope that Max Hairston can kind of figure things out on the fly if he's going to eventually be the starter. Because I just don't think Trey White, as much as I, you know, love the enthusiasm and the leadership he brings, it just has not been good enough for a team that expects to contend for a Super Bowl. All right, number 1 worry going into the bye week. This would probably not be hard to guess. It is the pass catchers. And just the lack of anything effective down the field for the Bills. And we talked about it at the top of the show with the number 5 concern, the run game lack of usage concern on how to protect Josh Allen. These guys just cannot make enough plays to make the Bills' passing game a threat. You look at the receiving group. Now, the Bills on Monday night didn't have Curtis Samuel at all, didn't have Jordan Palmer for most of the game. They didn't have Dalton Kincaid in that particular game. And then Keon Coleman, your number 2 draft pick, or I'm sorry, your top overall pick, drafted with the first pick of round 2, with the entire offense more or less to himself, him and Khalil Shakir. The main big play guy in the field, he has 11 yards receiving. I mean, that's just not good enough. You're not winning championships when the guy you want to count on, when no one else really there to take targets from him, James Cook didn't see a pass all night long, has 11 yards receiving. So we talked about Curtis Samuel. You can't depend on him health-wise. Elijah Moore has been a solid body, but not much more than that. Josh Palmer, like we said, 9 catches since week 1. Keon Coleman has not topped 3 catches in a game since week 1. The only real guy who's doing anything right now is Dalton Kincaid. And like I said, even him, he's not on pace for more than 1,000 yards. So this is not a pass-catching group that's impacting much anything right now. Khalil Shakir's numbers are down even a little bit from last year. Elijah Moore has 0 yards, 0 in the last 2 games. So I don't see how the Bills can function with the offense they need based on what we talked about with this defense. that's never been an incredible shutdown. I shouldn't say never. Has not in recent vintage been much of a shutdown defense. You need your offense to carry this team. You need your offense to be the fastball. And while you do have a fastball with Josh Allen and the run game and the offensive line, picking up something from this pass catching group might be the difference between a championship team and not a championship team. The two things that I remember from last year, number one, the Bills in the second half of the AFC Championship game had two second half throws that were more than 5 yards downfield to a wide receiver or a tight end. Two in the whole half of a game that you scored 29 points in. Now, the Bills still scored all those points, credit the run game, but they did not have a passing option when they absolutely needed it at the end of that ball game. Remember that last series, the one that ended with the Dalton Kincaid heave that he couldn't pull in, it was screen, quick throws to the outside, and then Josh Allen heaving and praying on fourth down while the blitz bears down on him. You can't have an offense that's that impotent when it comes to the pass-catching group. And you start to look back at, they were great last year. They scored 30 points in all these games. They scored 30 points in all these games this year. You start to wonder how much of that was a plus 24 turnover margin, which was historic for how good it was, papering over some of the issues you had with the personnel on offense. It's a heck of a lot easier to score 30 points a game when you're plus 2 turnovers most of those games. When you put the ball on the ground, as the Bills did last year, and recover 86% of your own fumbles. I mean, the Bills, as much as we talked about here, the number of things the Bills can do better on defense, with the run D in the secondary, potentially trading for someone, this is not going to end up a shutdown defense. You know, what we saw from them in the last 2 weeks, giving up 23, 24 points, that's probably about where they're going to live, against good teams at least. So you got to count your offense to score 27 or 30. And we've seen the last 2 weeks, especially against two better defenses. But again, in the playoffs, that's what you're going to see. You're not seeing the Jets in the playoffs, everybody. This ain't going to be a Dolphins, run you over defense in the playoffs. You're not going to catch teams that are going to rough your punter to bail you out from a 3-and-out in the playoffs. This offense has got to be better. This offense has got to be able to put up 27-30 in the postseason if this is going to be a Super Bowl team. And to me, that's going to require something else or some great improvement from the guys you have right now at pass catcher. So I might argue that corner 2 is my trade target. I think more so because I think you have a better chance of grabbing an impact corner, especially when you're talking about your number 2 guy, than you are going out there to find a receiver who can make an impact. Because number 1 receivers aren't available too often. And you could throw a speed guy in. I know people talked about Rashid Shaheed from the Saints. That makes some sense to me in terms of a non-number 1 type receiver who brings a different skill set that can help you on that side of the ball. But there aren't many guys in that level, that category of, he's a contributor, but he's not really a number 1 impact guy that I think would be worth the trade. Now, on the same team, Chris Olave is a guy I'm looking at. The Bills can land Chris Olave. I don't even care what else you want to, what corner might be available, what safety. It don't matter. Chris Olave is a guy that can do a lot of good things for this offense. He'd be a risk because Olave, unfortunately, is 1 concussion from his season basically ending. But in terms of his ability as a receiver, his ability to stretch the field, he would fit so many needs this offense has. But if they don't improve where they're at pass catcher, this to me is the number 1 thing that's going to prevent this Bills team from being a Super Bowl team. Because as good as you are with Josh Allen and James Cook in the offensive line, we've seen that when the run game is slowed down, when the run game is stopped like New England did, this offense has a heck of a time putting anything together. And I think some of the results have been the increase in turnovers, the increase in fumbles. That when you're pressing a little more to score, because your easy button, the run game is not there anymore, and you don't really have an answer down the field, that's when the mistakes happen. And the Bills with mistakes, and mistakes is an honorable mention for my top 5, turnovers and fumbles or turnovers and penalties have been up this year. The Bills have 30 penalties in the last 3 games. That's the most since Josh Allen's rookie year. And the concern with penalties is that I've always thought or been told or, football experts have said that penalties are the result of a lesser talented player trying to keep up with a more talented player. Well, when the Bills have a 3-game run that is commensurate with a 3-game run they had when Josh Allen was a rookie, when this roster was much, much worse you start to wonder about the overall talent level of this roster. Sure, again, injuries are a factor, but there are enough holes on this team that you're starting to see, I don't want to say the dam break, but certainly there are some leaks in the dam that are maybe indicative of larger roster-wide problems that need to be addressed. And like I said, I think specifically I'd go with receiver and corner as the places I'm worried about. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Amit Chitre joining me with a great conversation. Look, for everybody who's got kids in youth sports, kids who are heading towards perhaps a college scholarship or a college career, this is a conversation you're going to want to hear, and a book that you may want to go out and buy really soon. That's after a break. You're watching the Endgame right here in Rochester First. Remember the kids, all the cool ones, they call it Rochester. Back here in the Endgame with Thad around with you as always on a Thursday. We are, by the way, blue and yellow behind me for my Milwaukee Brewers. As long as they last here in the playoffs, we're going to keep it blue and yellow. And I figured, since I may not have a chance to have them active on Monday, we're going to do a little more blue and yellow today too. So good luck to them in Game 3 in LA tonight. But right now, got something much more enjoyable to talk about, even as a Brewers fan. Amit Chitre is with me. Good buddy from back in the day. Amit was a reporter at News 8 eons ago. There wasn't that long ago a time where I was your photographer and you're the reporter, right, and we're going out to cover, school meetings and accidents and whatever it was. But you have since moved on. You're now an author, which is incredible. Before we get into the book here, let's first give everybody at home kind of your career background. Like I said, you were a reporter a number of years ago. We will not mention.
We can do the math if you'd like.
Go ahead if you want.
2002 when I left here. So that's
23
years ago. And you were just starting off on the sports anchor desk. So we have co-anchored the weekend show together, Thad.
I don't remember that, but I know it had to have happened. Yes. Good times for sure. But all right, since then, in the last 23 years, kind of the quick
career
summation,
arc,
where you've gone to end up where you are now.
So I spent some time in PR at an agency. I spent some time at national nonprofits with the American Heart Association, and I've also launched my own communications consultancy. So over the past couple of decades, spent a lot of time in public relations, media relations, crisis communications, and that's really given me this breadth of experience, which you could put under one big umbrella of helping people tell their story, right? Figuring out the right thing to communicate at the right time.
So you have a number of kids of your own who played a lot of sports.
Yeah.
3 kids, right?
3 boys, all play sports. 2 play sports in college and 1 in high school. So, yeah.
So you've been doing this, 15 years of going to practices?
Oh, yeah.
Dealing with coaches, dealing with, kids up and downs when it comes to I'm getting playing time, I'm not getting playing time, all that stuff?
Right, and coaching myself. I spent a lot of time coaching my kids as they were younger. I spent a lot of time on the Victor Travel basketball board. So I'm really involved with, kids and sports and the sports community.
So here's the book. It's called The Other Playbook, Brand Lessons That Every Student Athlete Needs, But No One Ever Teaches. So what was the moment for you with all those years, not only in what you do professionally, but dealing with the kids, dealing with the sports, all the things they go through? What was the moment that made you think that this was something that either you wanted to do or something that was needed when it came to the sports world?
Just watching my kids go through their experience, I noticed a gap, right? So let's back up a little bit and just think about the pressures that student athletes face, especially in high school. You've got the pressure to perform. For many of them, the pressure to play at the next level. You've got academic pressure, peer pressure, family pressure. Many of them work as well. So that's a lot on high school student athletes, maybe more than ever before. And we haven't even talked about social media and that whole thing. So with all that pressure, unfortunately, student athletes sometimes make bad decisions. I mean, it's bound to happen. And when it happens, the families, the parents, and oftentimes the district is left kind of scrambling and dealing with the fallout when they should be focusing on more positive stories. So I thought about, how do districts typically try to address this? Well, they talk about their own values, right? And I know you have a kid that played sports. When you register them for high school sports, you always have to fill out all these waivers, and then there's something about behavior and values that you have to click accept.
The agreement, basically, with the coaches.
It's the cell phone agreement, right? You scroll through and then you click I accept at the bottom.
Yes.
How many people actually read that? And more specifically, how many students actually read that or retain it? And so I thought about it. The kids are told so many times that these are the values. This is what you must do. This is how you must behave. This is what you must follow. But there was no path for them to have any type of ownership to decide, this is what I want to stand for. And so that was the gap that I noticed. And so the other playbook, what it does is it gives students an opportunity to decide what are the values that they want to stand for, what are the behaviors that they can use to drive those values so that other people see them as the best version of themselves.
Real quick, what kind of writing experience did you have prior to this? I mean, this is your first book, correct?
It's my first book, and I've never written a book before, but I do a lot of writing, just in communications through PR, internal, external communications. And so that's, I guess, the extent of my writing experience, but never written a book before. But again, a lot of experience dealing with my kids and coaches from all sides of it.
When you look at this book online and what it's about, one of the things that sticks out is that the guidance that you're offering is kind of based on a corporate experience, the world of corporations.
Yeah.
Why is that the approach that you think works for 14, 15, 16-year-old kids?
Well, so I'm glad you asked that. So the genesis of the book, really started from a corporate training that I'd given for many years. And the basis of the training was every person's a product. I encourage people to think of, you're no different than a cell phone or a can of Coke. These companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure you feel a certain way when you engage with their product. It's not by accident. And so you have to think of yourself as a product, understand you have customers making judgments about you, and be deliberate in how you want them to feel about you. That's the corporate training. I also do a lot of work in crisis communication. So I look at this through a crisis communications lens for school districts, not just at the high school level, but think of the college level for NCAA athletics. Every time there's a major scandal, that's a black eye for the college, the institution, and they're left scrambling, dealing with the fallout. Right now, the NCAA is investigating, I think it's 12 players across 6 universities on a gambling scandal. You hear about academic integrity issues, criminal activity, maybe violence, sexual violence. Every time something like that happens, it's a black eye for the institution. But here's an opportunity for them from a risk mitigation standpoint to engage those students early on and have them have some ownership about, again, the values that they want to stand for. If they are actively involved in developing those things, it significantly reduces the risk for the college or university. So, I looked at it through my crisis communications lens, the corporate lens. But one day I was giving that training to an organization, and the night before, I wanted to run through it just one more time in front of a live audience. So I sat my voice down and said, hey, kids, listen to this. And as I was practicing, it occurred to me, why are we waiting until people are career professionals to teach them these skills? These are really life skills that student athletes could benefit from. And so that was really the spark that got me to write the book geared towards student athletes.
How much of this, you talk about the kids being products. How difficult is it to get people to embrace that? Because it really sounds off-putting in the arena of youth sports, high school sports, which is innocence, which is, people having fun. When you think of someone as a product, that gets very professional, business-like, and those two worlds don't seem to collide very easily.
Yeah, a lot of people are very cynical about it. Like, we're not products, we're kids, we want to have fun, and I get that. I don't want to take the fun out of it, but the point of thinking of yourself as a product is really to demonstrate that everyone is making some judgments about you. You have some customers, and just as you feel a certain way about a product, people will feel a certain way when they engage with you. So don't give them the chance to define you. Be deliberate about what you want to stand for. Take steps to drive those values so that you don't have to tell someone, I'm a leader, or I'm a good teammate, or I'm a good writer, or I'm creative. The behaviors you exhibit will lead them to that conclusion. Don't leave it to chance.
You talk about crisis management and being able to navigate those waters, but you also have an example that you provided. I think it was on a Facebook discussion. When you talk about crisis management, you mentioned, criminal things, the type of scandals that most people sitting here listening will think, I'll never do anything like that. I'm not a criminal. I'm not going to. But you brought up the Jalen Carter spitting incident from the opening NFL game of the season this year. And that is not someone who's going to jail. That is someone who had a heat of the moment, poor piece of judgment. And how does that, very understandable and something that easily could happen to anyone, how does that figure into what you want to teach people in terms of being able to manage those moments?
So always go back to understanding what your values are, right? If you have a process to define what your values are, if you think about it, if you're intentional about it, you're far less likely to get caught up in those heat of the moment type activities. You'll want to be more true to yourself. And Jalen Carter, I've never met him. I don't know him, but I do know his draft stock dropped because of some behavior issues in college. That potentially could have cost him a lot of money, right? And again, everyone loves a redemption story. Just because he made a mistake or two doesn't mean that's the person he's going to be. He always has an opportunity to change his behavior. But we need to think about these things. We need to think about what are the things we stand for. And if we do and take time to define that, we're far less likely to get caught up in the moment.
You said you've got 3 kids who've gone through most of the youth and scholastic sports experience. What do they think of this book?
So it's funny. My older 2, they're in college. They read it. They liked it. They practice a lot of the things that we talk about. My younger one's still in high school. He's a 10th grader. And, he's kind of reluctantly reading it along. And so I said, all right, come on, let's get on the horn. Let's read this. So I've started going through it with him. And that's been eye-opening for me. So rather than leave it to him to read, I go through each chapter with him. And the way the book is written, every chapter is a lesson. You can write in the book, so it's kind of a workbook. And as you go through it, you come up with your own brand values, behaviors, and plans. And so after each chapter, I discuss with them, well, why did you come up with this? Why did you prioritize one thing over the other? And it's led to some really interesting discussions, which I think is really how it's meant to be used for high school students. For them to go through it with a parent or a coach or a mentor, help them think about things in a different way. It's been great conversation with my kids.
You've brought it up with your kids, and even the title of the book says brand lessons every student athlete needs. How much of this, though, is for the parents, too, to understand the waters their kids are probably about to navigate, especially if they're, right where your youngest son is at 9th, 10th grade?
There are a couple of ways to look at it. First of all, parents need to look at this as well. People in corporate America need to look at this as well. Everyone needs to understand you're always being judged or reviewed, especially in the social media age where any moment can turn viral. You talked about the Milwaukee Brewers. Wasn't there just an incident with a fan at the Milwaukee Brewers game? I know one of these playoff games where she made a comment and it's gone viral.
I didn't see that at all.
Okay,
I can't say. Yeah, it didn't happen. I just haven't seen it. Yeah.
So everyone needs to be really aware about how you're being perceived. For student athletes, it's really important because think about the customers, so to speak, that they're going to have in their life over the next few years. Of course, you've got your coaches and your teammates who you want to perform well for, but your parents and family members. You may have admissions officers, scouts, recruiters, potential employers, your community members, church members, fans. Now in the world of NIL, that's a whole new sponsors. And so parents need to realize that these kids are under a lot of pressure. They have a lot of different variables coming at them. And going through this book with them will help ground them in their own values, right? Take the time now rather than when you're in a crisis, but take the time now to think about what's the person that I want to be, not just on the field, but on the field and off the field. Because for every student athlete, for every athlete, that athletic career ends at some point, right? You stop playing, whether it's after a professional career, college career, high school. And when that sport ends, who's the person you want to be? And so it's a great time now to think about what those values are, have those conversations with your kid, and then show your kid, well, these are the steps you can take to be that person.
It sounds like this is, and I know I'm going to point out why this is not what it is, but to a degree, it sounds like this is almost a how-to to land that top scholarship, to land that NIL. But really what you want this to be is more about just gathering a scholarship. In other words, cashing in on that athletic ability.
What I really want it to be is how do you build the best version of yourself to be successful in sports, school, and life? So don't look at this as a guide to, I'm going to land that scholarship or I'm going to get that NIL deal. It's really building the best version of you. Student athletes will have a clear understanding of who they are and what they represent, and that's going to help create for them a stronger team culture, fewer distractions, positive school reputation, and it's going to help them not just play better in sports, but they'll become better teammates, better leaders, and better representatives of their school.
Do kids do a better job of understanding what's going on in this book from the point of view of when you have to be a brand or when you're trying to manage that? There are so many different ways people view you now. 20 years ago, a kid was viewed by, let me see what they look like on tape, and that was it. Now there's your Instagram page, your X page, your Snapchat, what people who are on all those social medias then say about you. There are so many different windows into a student athlete these days. Do the kids do a better job of understanding the need or even how to manage it than maybe the parents do because of the generational gap between making use of social media these days?
I would say yes and no. I think they have a better understanding of all that's out there. I mean, I probably won't even know half the social media channels that a lot of the kids of this generation do. So they have a better understanding of all of the different ways they're being viewed. But I don't think they make a distinction between the different customers and how they're viewing them. And I'll give you an example. You'll find a player that will do something that they think is funny, or they'll post on social media because their teammates will think it's funny or clever. But they won't think about how a potential coach or a potential employer or scout might see that. And those people are looking. So I think they have an understanding in some ways, but I think there's still a lot of lack of understanding in other ways.
How much do you want school districts to get involved in making use of this book and the lessons involved? Because most of the conversation we've had so far has been primarily athletes, parents to a lesser degree, but clearly there seem to be some advantages and benefits to administrators, athletic directors, even coaches to trying to use some of the lessons in this book.
Absolutely. I think there are a couple of ways to look at it. I mean, the student athletes are the end user, they're the audience. But for parents, a great activity to go through with your child, especially for the high school students. For the high schools themselves, the districts and the athletic directors, it's a great way to build team culture. And again, for those schools where we say, these are the district values, this is how you should behave, this book is a great way to engage the student themselves and have them take some ownership and be part of that process of what their values are and how that aligns with the district. So it can help the team, help the district, if coaches want to use this, especially during the off season. I know a lot of coaches are looking for activities to do with their teams during the off season. Read a chapter at a time, come together, let's discuss for 15 minutes. That's something that can really be a great team building activity. And then for the colleges, absolutely. I mean, we talked about this at the college level from a risk mitigation standpoint. If there's an opportunity for colleges to engage students proactively before they even set foot on campus and think about what are the brand values I want to stand for, how do I drive those brand values? And then once they get on campus, have the coaches re-engage them with, okay, let's talk about this chapter for 15 minutes before practice. Then you're going to significantly reduce your risk and see a reduction in some of those off-field behaviors that tend to cause problems.
What's been the reception so far? You talk about your involvement in Victor Sports and how heavily involved you are, not just as a parent. What has been the reception from kids, from coaches, from parents that you've brought this book to? I don't want like a sales number, but just the almost word of mouth stuff in terms of how effective these lessons have been so far.
So it's been very positive, and the main reason why is because it is interactive. It gives students a chance to be part of the process, and there's nothing like that I've seen out there. So the athletic directors have been really positive, great to work with, very inviting. I've been meeting with several of them around Section 5. I've started to line up a couple of meetings with athletic directors at the college level, but the parents are the ones that surprised me the most, because when I wrote this book, I really intended it for the students, and I thought I'd be going through the high schools and the colleges. But the parents are the ones who said, kind of similar to my own experience of, boy, this was actually interesting to go through with my kid. It really led to some great conversations I didn't expect.
What has been the target audience? Not necessarily the parent, but like the age kid. Does this work for 10 and 11-year-olds? Do you save it for junior high? Do you save it for upperclassmen in high school? Where do you think is the wheelhouse for where these lessons can be the most effective?
It really is high school and college student athletes. I think when you get to the modified level, it's a little complicated for them. It might be a little too soon. So high school and college student athletes. And again, my youngest is a sophomore in high school. I'm going through it with him, and it's been a great experience.
What are your goals What do you hope comes of this book? Again, I imagine sales are part of it, but separate of that, what kind of an impact do you hope this makes on the Section 5 athletic community and beyond as far as it'll go?
Well, so it's interesting being so involved in youth sports, especially in Victor. You get to see and meet a lot of students, and you feel proud when you see a kid you've coached through fourth grade, make it through and play on at the next level and do well. At the same time, it hurts when they make a silly mistake that you see cost them. And so I just see this book as a tool that really can help students find the best version of themselves. Again, not just in sports, but in school and life. And I think if students read this and can pick out a little of those tidbits and define their brand values, and it helps them at some stage in life, as a parent and as a former volunteer coach, that makes me really happy.
How much can you think in terms of tangible benefits? We talked about that this is not a book primarily as a driver to get a scholarship, but when you want to say to someone, hey, you go through this book and you're going to end up with this, or this is going to happen, as tangible as you can make it, what are some of the things that if you want to say, why should you buy it? This is the answer.
Well, again, I go back to, the conversation we had around being a product, right? So companies, they spend so much money to make sure you feel a certain way when you engage with them, right? So we have to think about that ourselves. So the tangible benefit is you will have a clear understanding of who you are and who you want to be and how to get there. And it sounds, kind of pie in the sky, but that really is a tangible benefit. I've seen the result when I've given the corporate training, coming back to companies after I've given the training, and people saying, boy, this has really helped me because I thought I was being this, but until I went through the process of defining my brand values and thinking about my behaviors, now I realize I wasn't really projecting that. Well, I should be doing this instead. And so that tangible benefit is really defining and becoming the best version of you.
Is it surprising that the corporate world and the athletic world marry so easily in this way?
No, because we think about corporate lessons from sports all the time. When I do corporate trainings, I'm always using sports analogies. When we talk about sports, we often bring in lessons from business. So the two really go hand in hand.
How much fun has this been for you? To me, when I think about writing a book, I think of this is the kind of chore I feel like I'm in 12th grade again, and I have an essay that's due tomorrow that I haven't started yet. That's what it feels like to me. What was it like for you to go through this process?
It really was a passion project because it combines all the things I enjoy doing, right? The communication side of my career we talked about, and that's always been fun. But the coaching, the youth sports, going through the process with my kids, I've really enjoyed it. When I say passion project, it really has been a passion project.
That's awesome. Tell people where you can find the book.
You can go on Amazon. Actually, just recently got certified as an Amazon bestseller, so you can see that seal right there. And I'm really excited about that. If you go on Amazon and search The Other Playbook, you could find it. You could also visit my website at theotherplaybook.pro.
That's awesome. Amit, thanks very much for joining us, man. It's great to see you.
Great seeing you too.
Do you miss the news side at all? Do you miss the news business at all?
I miss this. This has been great hanging out with you, Thad.
Really cool to have you in, man. I appreciate it. So please, everybody go out there and find the book. Are you going to do any in-person? Does this eventually turn into Amit going around to high schools and maybe doing an in-person seminar with this kind of thing?
Yeah, I've talked to athletic directors about that as well. And when we talk about ways we can incorporate the book, I would love to come out and talk to their coaches as well. So yeah, absolutely.
And that's primarily what you've been doing too. I mean, not necessarily always in person, but it's certainly on the corporate side to a degree.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Thank you very much for having us in or being here today.
Yeah, great seeing you.
Really cool talking with you. All right, it's going to wrap it up for us today. Appreciate everybody watching and listening. Remember, go out and find the book. It's awesome. Let me put the camera up here. We are back on Monday. We will begin getting you ready for the Bills and the Panthers week number 8. We'll talk about whatever happens over the weekend in the NFL. The Chiefs get Rashee Rice back. That should be okay. We'll see how that offense incorporates him and how much better Patrick Mahomes and company can be. For today, that is it. For Amit Chitre, thanks for coming in. I'm Thad Brown. Thank you very much for watching the Endgame. We will see you again on Monday.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.